I caught her sneaking out of my apartment at 2 a.m. She glared and said, "You don't own me. I'll be back when I feel like it." I just nodded. But when she came back days later, someone was waiting for her inside, and it wasn't me. The click of the deadbolt was what woke me. It was 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the sound was wrong. Too quiet, too deliberate. I saw her silhouette slip out of the bedroom, fully dressed. When I caught her at the front door, bag in hand, she didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. Annoyed that I'd woken up. She glared at me, her eyes cold and defiant in the dim light of the hallway. "You don't own me, Mark," she hissed. "I'll be back when I feel like it." I didn't yell. I didn't ask where she was going. I just stood there, watched her close the door behind her, and nodded once to the empty space where she had been. She thought she was making a statement about her freedom. She thought she could treat my home like a hotel, and me like the concierge. What she didn't know was that with that one sentence, she had just checked out. Permanently. And when she decided she felt like coming back, she wasn't going to find me. She was going to find the one person in the world she was terrified of, sitting on my couch, waiting to finally teach her the lesson about consequences she'd been avoiding her entire life. My line of work is security consulting. I spend my days analyzing threats, identifying vulnerabilities, and creating systems to protect valuable assets. My entire career is built on seeing things that other people miss and acting decisively before a situation gets out of control. It's ironic, then, that the biggest security breach of my life was sleeping in my bed for the last 6 months. I'm 39. I own my apartment in a secure, high-end building. My life is orderly, disciplined, and calm. Or it was until Maya. I met her a year ago. She's 32, a whirlwind of chaotic energy who works as a freelance graphic designer, taking just enough jobs to fund her experiences. She called herself a free spirit. I thought it was charming. I saw her as a vibrant, exciting contrast to my structured life. Looking back, I was just a mark, confusing a lack of character for a personality. She moved in 6 months ago. It was her idea. Her lease was up, and she spun a story about wanting to be more serious, about building a real life with me. I agreed, with one condition. She had to contribute. Not much, just a small, fixed amount towards utilities and groceries. I wasn't looking for a freeloader. She agreed, but the money was always late, always accompanied by an excuse. I let it slide. That was my first mistake. I was treating a vulnerability as an acceptable risk. The late nights started about 2 months ago. She'd come home smelling of smoke and cheap beer, long after I was asleep. When I'd ask where she'd been, she'd get defensive. "I was out with friends, Mark. You're not my warden." She'd use words like suffocating and controlling when all I was doing was asking a simple question. The red flags were there, waving in my face, but I ignored them. I was emotionally invested, and it was clouding my judgment. Then came last Tuesday. The click of the lock. It was a professional's touch, slow and quiet, meant to be unheard. But I'm a light sleeper. I got out of bed and walked to the hallway. She was there, at the front door, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket, her purse slung over her shoulder. She was frozen like a deer in headlights, one hand on the doorknob. The confrontation was short and brutal. There was no room for misunderstanding. "Going somewhere?" I asked, my voice flat. Her fear instantly morphed into anger. It was a classic deflection tactic. "I don't have to report my movements to you," she snapped. "At 2 in the morning without a word? In the apartment we share?" "Yeah, you do." That's when she delivered the line that severed everything. She took a step towards me, her face a mask of contempt. "You don't own me, Mark. I'll be back when I feel like it." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut, and I was left standing in the silence. The hurt was there, a deep, cold ache. But my professional instincts took over. A breach had occurred. The asset, my home, my life, my peace, was compromised. The threat needed to be neutralized. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I let her walk right into the consequences I was about to build for her. My first move was to secure the perimeter. I have a state-of-the-art security system in my apartment. I logged into the admin panel on my computer. I deactivated her key fob and her entry code. I changed the master code. As of 2:25 a.m., she was physically locked out of the building and the apartment. My second move was to cut off her internal access. I logged into our shared accounts, the phone bill, which was under my name, the streaming services, the Amazon Prime account. I changed every password and removed her as an authorized user. Her comfortable, subsidized life was being systematically dismantled. My third and final move was the most important. It was the one she would never see coming. I thought about who she was, what she valued. She valued her so-called freedom, which was really just an escape from responsibility. And who in her life represented the opposite of that? Who was the one person she complained about, the one person whose judgment she feared? Her father, General David Miller, retired. A man who spent 30 years in the military, a man who believed in discipline, accountability, and order above all else. Maya had spent her entire adult life running from his rigid expectations. She had moved across the country to get away from him. He still paid her car insurance and phone bill, a fact she conveniently omitted when she talked about her independence. I had his number from a brief, formal meeting we'd had last Christmas. I picked up my phone and called him. It was nearly midnight his time, but I knew he'd be awake. He answered on the second ring, his voice sharp and alert. "Miller." "General," I said, my voice calm and respectful. "This is Mark. I apologize for the late hour, but I'm facing a situation with Maya, and I believe you need to be aware of it." I laid it out for him. No emotion, just facts. I told him about her sneaking out, her statement, and the fact that our relationship was now over. I told him that I had secured my apartment and that she would not be able to re-enter. I told him that, as of this moment, his daughter was effectively homeless. He was silent on the other end for a long time. I could hear him breathing, processing the information. "She has a history of this kind of behavior, Mark," he finally said, his voice heavy with a disappointment that sounded decades old. "Running away when things get difficult." "I understand that, sir," I said. "But my home can no longer be her crash pad. She needs to come home. To you." "What are you proposing?" he asked. "I'm proposing a solution," I said. "I will pack her belongings. You fly here and you take her home. Red, you're the only one she can't run from." Another long pause. "When?" She said she'll be back when she feels like it. "My guess is 2 or 3 days, after her fund runs out. Can you be here by Friday?" "I'll be on the first flight tomorrow morning," he said, and the line went dead. The trap was set. Maya was out there, living her free-spirited fantasy, with no idea that her greatest fear was flying across the country to come and collect her. She wasn't just going to lose her place to live. She was going to lose her illusion of freedom. Update 1, 3 days later. The support from this community has been a solid data point in an otherwise chaotic situation. It confirms my initial assessment that a line was crossed from which there is no return. The last 3 days have been a study in methodical execution. General Miller arrived on Wednesday morning, exactly as promised. He's an imposing man, even in civilian clothes. He carries himself with an unshakable sense of authority. We shook hands at the door to my apartment, and there was a moment of silent, mutual understanding. We were two men dealing with the same problem from different angles. "I appreciate you handling this with a level head, Mark," he said, his eyes scanning the apartment, noting its order and cleanliness. "I'm just neutralizing a threat to my security, General," I replied. We spent the next 2 days packing Maya's life into boxes. It was a strange, almost clinical process. The General was ruthlessly efficient. He sorted her clothes, her art supplies, her half-finished projects, with a kind of grim determination. He found things that even I hadn't seen. A stash of credit card bills, all maxed out and hidden in a shoebox. A diary filled with angry rants about how stifling her life was, how she deserved more. He didn't comment on any of it. He just packed it all away. During that time, we talked. He told me about Maya's childhood, about her constant rebellion against any form of structure. He told me about the string of failed jobs, the unpaid loans, the trail of chaos she had left in her wake. He had hoped I would be the one to finally ground her. "I think," he said, taping up a box of her shoes, "she mistook your stability for a safety net she could jump from, instead of a foundation she could build on." He was right. Maya's return came on Friday afternoon, almost exactly 72 hours after she had left. My security system alerted me that my doorman had called up, saying Maya was in the lobby demanding access. I told him not to let her up, that she was no longer a resident. A few minutes later, my phone started ringing. It was her. I ignored it. Then came the texts. First angry, then confused, then pleading. "Mark, what is going on? The doorman won't let me up. Why is my key fob not working? Did you seriously lock me out? This isn't funny. Mark, please, my phone is about to die. I have nowhere to go. Just let me in so we can talk. I didn't respond. I just sat in the living room with the general, watching the messages come in. He looked at his phone, then at me. She's calling me now, he said. He answered, putting it on speaker. Dad? Maya's voice was frantic, on the verge of tears. Something's wrong with Mark. He's locked me out of the apartment. Can you call him? He's not answering my calls. I know he's not, Maya, the general said, his voice like granite. I'm in his apartment right now. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could picture her face, the dawning horror, as she processed what he had just said. What? She whispered. I'm here to take you home, he said. Mark and I have had a long talk. Your little vacation is over. Come up to the apartment. The doorman will let you up now. He hung up. 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened it. She was standing there, looking pale and disheveled. Her eyes darted from me to her father, who was now standing in the entryway, his arms crossed. The fight went out of her instantly. The defiant, arrogant woman who had stormed out of my apartment 3 days ago was gone, replaced by a sullen, defeated child. What is he doing here? She asked, her voice barely audible. He's here because you are no longer my responsibility, I said. You said you'd be back when you felt like it. You gave up your right to live here. Your father has graciously offered to take you in. You called my dad? She shrieked, the anger returning. You went behind my back and called my father? You have no right. It was the general who answered her. He has every right, Maya. It's his home. You treated it and him with zero respect. You've been living in a fantasy world, and it ends today. Your things are packed. We have a flight back home tomorrow morning at 0800. She tried to argue, to cry, to manipulate. She turned to me, pleading. Mark, please, I made a mistake. I was stupid. Don't do this. It's already done, Maya, I said. I pointed to the neat stack of boxes that lined the hallway. Your new life starts now. She spent the night in the guest room. The door closed. The general slept on the couch. The apartment was filled with a tense, heavy silence. She didn't come out. She didn't eat. She just stayed in that room, a prisoner of the consequences she had created. The free spirit was finally grounded. Update 2. 2 weeks later. It has been 2 weeks since I drove Maya and her father to the airport. The silence in my apartment is no longer tense. It's clean. It's the sound of order being restored. Thank you for following this story and for the insightful comments. It's clear this kind of behavior is more common than I thought. The flight home, according to a brief professional follow-up call from the general, was unpleasant. Maya was apparently sullen and hostile, refusing to speak to him. When they arrived at her parents' home, the reality of her new situation began to set in. Her father, true to his word, had laid down the law. Her freelance career, which consisted of a few small projects a month, was not a real job. She had 30 days to find full-time employment. Her nights of going out and coming home whenever she pleased were over. She had a curfew. She was expected to contribute to the household, to clean, to cook. She was, for the first time in her adult life, being treated like an adult with responsibilities, and she was not handling it well. Her attempt to rally support and paint me as the villain failed spectacularly. She called her friends, the ones she had likely been out with on the night she left. She spun a tale of a controlling, obsessive ex who had locked her out and called her father to have her dragged away. It didn't work. One of her friends, a woman named Sarah, who I had always thought was the most level-headed of the group, actually called me. She apologized. I need to be honest, Mark, she said. We all knew she was seeing someone else. We told her she was playing with fire. She has a pattern of doing this, of using people for stability and then getting bored. What you did, honestly, it's probably the best thing that could have happened to her. That phone call was more validating than anything else. It confirmed that this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was who she was. The man she had been sneaking out to see has, predictably, vanished from the picture. He was a bartender at a dive bar she and her friends frequented. He was part of the experience, the thrill of rebellion. He wasn't interested in a long-distance relationship with a broke, unemployed woman living with her parents under a strict curfew. He stopped answering her calls within a week. My life, in contrast, has been a return to productive normalcy. I've deep cleaned the apartment, getting rid of the last traces of her presence. I sold the ridiculously uncomfortable couch she had insisted on buying and replaced it with a classic leather one. I've been focusing on my work, landing a major new client that will require all of my attention for the next few months. The focus is welcome. It's clean, logical, and the outcomes are predictable. I did have one final piece of business to handle. Maya had left behind a few valuable items, including a laptop and some professional camera equipment that I had bought for her to help her with her design business. Her father called and asked what I wanted to do with them. I told him to sell them. Use the money to pay back the security deposit on her last apartment, I said. I know for a fact she never paid it. There was a pause on the other end. How did you know that? The general asked. It's my job to know things. I said, tell her the rest of the money can be a severance package. The message was clear. I was not just ending our personal relationship. I was closing every loophole, every last vestige of her dependency on me. The final invoice was being paid. Final update, 3 months later. It's been 3 months. The seasons are changing, and so has my life, entirely for the better. The chapter on Maya is well and truly closed, and the ending is more fitting than I could have written myself. The reports I get, indirectly through a chain of acquaintances, paint a grim picture of Maya's new reality. Life under her father's roof has been a brutal awakening. She did get a job, as mandated. She's a junior designer at a small local advertising agency, earning an entry-level salary. The days of working a few hours a week and spending the rest of her time on experiences are over. She works 9 to 5, has a commute, and has to answer to a boss. It is, by all accounts, her personal version of hell. Her relationship with her father is strained to the breaking point. She resents him for his control, and he is deeply disappointed in her lack of character. She is, for the first time, being forced to live within her means, and she is discovering that her means are far more modest than she ever believed. She tried to reach out to me about a month ago. A long, rambling email found its way to my junk folder. It was a classic manipulation attempt, filled with phrases like, "You were my rock," and "I didn't know how good I had it." She blamed her behavior on fear of commitment, on her upbringing, on everything but herself. She ended it by saying she had changed, that she was finally growing up, and asked if we could just talk. I deleted it without a reply. People don't change because they're forced into a new situation. They change when they take responsibility for getting themselves there. She wasn't taking responsibility. She was just looking for an escape route from the consequences. The most satisfying part of this whole ordeal wasn't the confrontation. It was the quiet, methodical process of reclaiming my life. The revenge wasn't a loud, explosive event. It was a silent, strategic removal of a threat. I identified the vulnerability, assessed the risk, and executed a plan to neutralize it. She thought her power was in her defiance, in her ability to come and go as she pleased. She never understood that real power lies in stability, in self-sufficiency, in the quiet confidence of a man who owns his own life. I didn't need to scream or rage to win. I just needed to make one phone call and let the natural order of her life reassert itself. I'm seeing someone new now, an architect. She's brilliant, driven, and her life is as well structured as the buildings she designs. We have conversations about foundations, about integrity, about building things that last. When she stays the night, she doesn't sneak out. She's there in the morning, making coffee, talking about our plans for the day. It's a partnership, not a sponsorship. Maya's final desperate act was to tell people I had ruined her life. But I didn't. I just stopped letting her ruin mine. I opened the door, and she walked out of it. Her father was just the consequence waiting on the other side. She said I didn't own her. And she was right, but she didn't own me either. And the moment she forgot that, the game was over. She just didn't know it yet.